The blues. Makes you feel better when you're down and makes you feel great when you're feeling good. I started learning about the blues when I was just a kid, when I first picked up my first guitar, and I'm still studying it decades later. I love that. It's part of Americana. It's the roots of America that we get to enjoy because it's owned by Americans, but it's spread throughout the world. And as a performer, I always wanted to be able to play with some great players. People like Muddy Waters, Coco Taylor, Jimmy Rogers. Those people were really not around when I started performing. But our next guest got that opportunity. He's one of the finest harmonica players in America. Is he any good? I don't know. Nominated for Grammy, more awards than you can count on one hand. I think he's really good. And he can tell stories that all of us would want to hear if you're a blues aficionado. If you're not, sit back and learn a little bit about Chicago blues and the blues across America. In this episode, next on KT and the Trout.
KT and the Trout Show!
Hey everybody, it's the Trout. Welcome to the 11th episode of KT and the Trout. Yes, you'll notice that KT's not here. He's on assignment, and that means he's on assignment in a musical opportunity. So we will fill in completely for him tonight and wish him luck on his next venture with his band. But tonight, we have a great guest tonight, and I'm looking forward to talking to him. And, you know, one of the things is when I talk to all these guests, the first thing I always do is look them up and try to figure out what's important about them so we can talk about it. Well, right here is the paperwork that's going out of the way. So I'm just going to read this before I introduce our guest. Bob Corritore is considered among the top traditional blues harmonica players on the scene today. Additionally, he's the owner of the Rhythm Room in Phoenix, correct? In Phoenix? Isn't that where the Rhythm Room is? Okay. He's a radio host of Those Lowdown Blues on KJZZ, the founder of the Southwest Musical Arts Foundation, the editor and main writer of the Bob Corritore Blues newsletter, an official endorser of Hohner harmonicas, a Keeping the Blues Alive award recipient, and my favorite one, and a Grammy nominated harmonica player and producer. So welcome, Bob Corritore. Welcome, Bob. How are you tonight?
I'm doing good. Thanks for the powerful intro. I hope I can live up to that.
So, no problem. You know, and we start out with some basic things like, and I did your bio and read about it. And one of the things that always intrigues me about most of the people I have on here are musicians. We all started young. You started at about 12, if I remember right. And what I did notice was, where were you originally born? Where were you born?
Chicago.
So you're Chicago. And how old were you when you moved to Phoenix?
I was 25 because it was right after my 25th birthday that I moved.
And were you already a player? Or you were already playing in bands in Chicago?
You know, at that point, I was so involved already in the blues. I thought I was just taking a little vacation from Chicago. I thought I was going to live in Phoenix for about a year. And I was trying to figure out my life. And Phoenix seemed like a good stop. My brother lived here and invited me out. I'm like, yeah, I really enjoyed the warm winters of Phoenix, and I need to in a kind of life crisis. So I was wondering if I was going to be a musician or try and do a regular day gig, or how I was supposed to fit my love for music into my real life. And Chicago was a distraction. I was playing all these South and West Side blues clubs with various, and that was great, but you can't really make a living doing that. And at the same time, I loved it so much I couldn't stay away from it. So I'm like, I better just go sort this out somewhere. Maybe my brother can. And I ended up just staying in Phoenix. Louisiana Red followed me out here. And next thing you know, I started a radio show, then the nightclub. I got established early on from Louisiana Red as a musician in town, and just kept going from there. So I found very quickly put down some roots here that I didn't expect I would do. And so I've kind of created my own little Chicago away from Chicago here in Phoenix. So,
well, you know, funny thing about it, of course, Chicago blues, we all know about Chicago blues because KT and I are both blues guys. I grew up in South Texas, so I've got the Texas side of everything.
Mhm.
And when you said Chicago, I went, well, you got Buddy Guy and all those other guys up there that were Chicago players. But when you when you move to Phoenix, it's not the blues capital of anything. It wasn't. So you helped bring in the blues to the Phoenix area. I assume that's what you were wanted to do, and that's what you did.
Rick, I have to kind of correct you because Phoenix had an underground scene. It was never the
Oh,
Chicago,
really? Okay, good.
but there's some really amazing players that were here, and it was just right in the middle of everything. And a lot of people would move here from other places. So you had Texans, a lot of Texans moved
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
California, Chicago, Louisiana Red. I met him in Chicago. I'd seen him play before, but we played at the Delta Fish Market. He called me up and said, "Bobby, where are you at?" I go, I'm in Phoenix." He goes, "Well, I know a woman out there. I'll come out there and visit." And I go, "If you do, let's get some gigs." I didn't take it too seriously, but 2 weeks
Hmm.
later, Louisiana Red shows up. So next thing you know, he's over there with Eunice Davis, who's also a musician, which I didn't even know about. And next thing you know, after that, she says, "Well, better come pick up Red." I just kicked him out. So
Yeah,
I had Louisiana Red, and we played all the time. I mean, literally every day. I'd wake up in the morning and I'd be cooking breakfast, and Red would be playing some John Lee Hooker on the guitar in the living
right.
room. Oh, this is crazy. Here I'm in Phoenix and I'm living this blues life. After Red left, after about a year, uh, he left after living with me for about a year and moved to Germany. He had met his wife on a tour that he was on over there and
Okay.
stayed over. I quickly joined Big Pete Pearson's band. I had worked with Tommy Duke's band, an early version of Janova Magnus's band. A guy named Chief Shibute Giliame, Buddy Reed, and in 1986, Chico Chisholm moved out here from Chicago. He was Howlin' Wolf's last drummer. So, but you have all these different players here, and there's things that happen that people wouldn't realize. Like Louis Jordan lived in Phoenix in his retirement years in the
Hmm.
1950s, and um, there was a really wonderful studio called Audio Recorders, and there's also uh, a great mastering lab called Wakefield Manufacturing. And so people could go there. They could record something at Audio Recorders, and like Linda Lou was recorded by Ray Sharp in Phoenix. But
Oh,
the
okay.
people go to the studio, get a great sounding recording. Um, that morning, they go in the afternoon and get it mastered and pressed up, and they'd be off to California on their tour with a trunk load full of 45. So
That's funny.
there's a lot that happened like that were a little bit off the radar. Lowell
Yeah.
Full cousin had a nightclub over here. There's a guy named Duffy who had Poor Man's Records and managed a lot of things. A lot of great talent that never really had an opportunity to get on the national radar. But there's a lot of stuff that was happening here that was, part Texas, part California. Some of it was indigenous to Arizona. And then, people like myself and Chico Chisholm and Louisiana Red and Dave Riley later after that. And now Jimmy Primetime Smith and Carl Weathersby both live here in Phoenix. So there's a lot of people moving here and making Phoenix their home. So it's something that you have to kind of, even though most people don't know Phoenix, it really is it has its own little blues vibe that's uniquely this town.
It's and I know you're younger than me, but what's interesting to me is I started liking the blues when I was very young. I can't tell you why. I think it was because I was a Stones fan and the Stones played Little Red Rooster and they played stuff like that. And I said, man, I like this stuff. And it's just stuck with me over the years. And in fact, at one time, the last band that I put together, we thought we were just going to do all blues. But that's kind of hard because, now it's all about tribute bands and everything like that. And I admire, and this is, and you know this better than I do, so many of the great players, they're gone. The ones that I grew up on, the famous people you were just mentioning, Howlin' Wolf a while ago, all the guys that, I never had the opportunity. I think you'll ask you in a minute, but you probably had the opportunity to meet some of them. But and I don't know. I mean, there are some people coming up, and I don't know about your scene out there in the Dallas area. I'm sure there's probably some blues guys coming up. but you're unique in the fact that you're a mouth organ guy, a harmonica
Yeah,
guy. And it's kind of like, when you put a band together, and if you need, there's certain people that are hard to find. Keyboard players are hard to find, bass players are hard to find. Lead guitar players like me, nah, there's a lot of us guys out there, and sometimes drummers. So I look at people like yourself, Bob, that play the harmonica as just really unique and talented because it's just an instrument. When I started looking at the Marine band harmonica when I was a kid, and I thought, oh man, how hard could this? There's just 10 holes. How hard, and then I hear a famous blues guy whip this baby out and like Sonny Boy, and I go, what am I kidding myself? So when you were growing up, was that the first instrument you played, was the harmonica, or did you take up something else before that?
yeah. I fool around with guitar and fiddle and flute even a little bit, but I it was harmonica that really that seemed to be my expression instrument. So I really fell in love with that. I always loved the sound of it. You hear it in blues and pop music, and
Yeah.
initially I'll hear what's on the radio, and I heard mainly the pop music, but all of a sudden I'm hearing some blues sneak into some of that. I remember when AM kind of made way for FM, and FM
Mhm.
had a little bit more freedom, and hearing a Muddy Waters song, and I was very young, and I'm like, wow, that's everything that I like about music right there. And then I started exploring all the other stuff, and I realized I was born right in the hotbed of all of this great music. And it didn't take too long to figure out I could go see a little bit here and there. Muddy Waters actually played my high school gymnasium.
Yeah.
I mean, I
Yeah.
was right at university. Hound Dog Taylor and all these great shows would be there. There was a little pizza place where Blind Jim Brewer would play every Tuesday. You could go down to Maxwell Street on Sunday morning and see Big Walter Horton and a whole slew of
Oh,
amazing.
wow.
And so all of that was around even before I was of age to hit the blues clubs. And then when I was 18, I had a fake ID said I was 19, and I could get into the
Yeah.
blues club. And then I got to see Howlin' Wolf and Muddy Waters and in various nightclubs and whatnot. Eddie Taylor, Sunnyland Slim, the whole kit and caboodle of all the fantastic Chicago blues guys that were just around. Coco Taylor, and they were playing just a few miles away from where I lived. And so in a 15-minute drive, I'm off to see Otis Rush or whoever
Wow.
was
Yeah.
the closest blues club. And then
Well,
entering off the south and west sides, all of a sudden you're seeing the whole other thing of like the blues played in a black neighborhood to a black audience, and that gave it a different dimension than seeing it on the north side, which was a very integrated audience, a lot of college kids, a different deal. But the whole thing was just really powerful, and you're like going, okay, this is how this fits into the world. This is a music of the people by the people, and it's a place where that person that might have been uh, still in their FedEx uniform and get up on the stage and become the king of the world for a
mm,
couple songs. And that was just how it was. Blues was a common man's music that made everybody a vehicle of this insightful expression. And I just love that about the music.
when I studied, I wish if I had the money, I would do a movie about the blues, but take it a different way because people know about Robert Johnson and all those people, but you know that's Americana. It's one of the few musical things that we do in America that's ours. You got Dixieland, but blues is our music, so to speak. And historically, it goes back a long ways. And watching these old blues players play, and of course now we have YouTube, which is I'm thankful for that because they got a lot of stuff on there I could never see before. But I just think the history is real important to the history of the country. And so when you started out and you started playing, did you just kind of go up to the guys and say, "Hey, can I sit in? Let me play a little bit with you," and they'd kind of go away, boy, bother me, or would they just let you go? Okay, and let them try it. How was that? How did you do that?
Well, okay, you first started playing, and I played in free period with some of my high school people, and we had a band, and I've just learned. But as I got better and better, I'd go there. And sometimes, I think the first time I ever sat in at a club in Chicago was with Little Mac Simmons, who's a great harmonica player. And I talked to him about harmonica and my interest. And he says, I want you to come up and play a song with me. So I went up there and we did a harmonica duet, and it went over and he had me do another one. And I'm going, wow, okay, that's really cool. And Lonnie Brooks was playing in the band.
Oh, Lonnie Brooks. Wow, there's a name I haven't heard for a while. Yeah.
And this was before he was on Alligator. So he was kind of like the Chicago blues jukebox. He would do some originals, but he mainly did the catalog of all of the classics of Chicago blues, all the request numbers. And so he's like, hey, I'm doing a gig, my own gig, over here. Come on by and bring some harmonicas. And, I just found it really unbelievable how people would let you in. And then the Aces had a Monday night blues jam over on the South Side called at a place called Louise's Lounge, and they called it the Blue Monday over there. And here I am at age 18, and I'm being invited to do a couple numbers with the Aces on this jam.
Yeah.
What is it? This is unbelievable. Coco Taylor, I used to hang out with her on the breaks when she played Biddy Mulligan's, and she'd have me play a couple numbers before she got up with her band. So, and the accessibility and the acceptance was something that I found unbelievable, because here I was, this person, blues is a music of Black heritage, and my heroes have always been the originators of this music. And if I play it, I want to play it with a reverence, a respect for.
I understand
How this music, there's a spirituality that goes along with this music.
Right.
That if I don't know how you would play it. And so when I'm playing, I'm thinking about Coco Taylor. I'm thinking about seeing how play Big Walter Horton play and Maxwell Stream, thinking about all that stuff and how it affected me, and how am I supposed to take these lessons and move them forward, in a respectful way, knowing, of course, that I'm not the originator of that music, but that it's a music that has guided my life. So, but I was accepted in ways I just couldn't believe, and people would know me. If they found out I played harmonica, they would insist that I get up there. There was a real amazing connection. I got up there, and I guess I was good enough. I didn't suck.
Well, that's kind of important, wasn't it?
So I would get called up again, and there are people that they saw me in the audience, and they would have me come up and do a number with them, and it was a pretty cool thing. So, and there's so many great harmonica players that I could also learn from them, and all of a sudden I became kind of their protege, and they said, yeah, my boy over here, he's all right, and so, and then you had a couple people like Bragger and Willie Buck. Willie Buck was really my first employer in playing some of the real blues clubs with the real blues bands. He was the first guy that thought enough of me to hire me for gigs. And I was playing with these unbelievable all-star bands with Willie. And I'm like, how am I in this band with Louis Myers and Dave Myers and Odie Payne and Big Moose Walker, and I'm just me? I go, Louis, I don't think I'm supposed to be up here with y'all. And he's like, you playing, go on. I'm like, okay. I try and be thankful for the blessings of those opportunities, and I try and make sure that I live up to these blessings that I've been giving. If I can do that, that's great. I'm always feeling like I'm a student of the music. I need to go a little bit further to really capture a little bit more. But again, this is a lifelong study. This is something I'll never be done with.
Well, I agree with you. My wife knows how I feel, that probably my guitars will be buried with me. I'm a Les Paul guy. So, and when you played at these clubs in Chicago, were they mostly black clubs? Were you one of the white guys there, and that was it, or were they a mix? Or when you were playing on that in Chicago,
we're in black clubs, because I wasn't of interest to the people in the white club. I'd sit in the white clubs, but and they weren't exactly white clubs, because if you're in Chicago's it's a melting pot of all cultures.
Sure.
But go to blues clubs like Biddy Mulligan's or Blues or Kingston Mines. It's very mixed, and there's a lot of white interest and college kid interest in it at that point in time in the 1970s. But there were always different people. And Chicago was so rich in musicians that if you went to see one great musician, chances are there was going to be 5, 10, 20 different other great musicians,
Well,
literal recording artists that would be in the audience. And some of the times you just look around and you go, look, I'm here at a Smokey Smothers gig, and here's Sunnyland Slim, and here's Andrew Brown, and here's Billy Boy Arnold, and the list just would go on. You just go, how is this? How am I right in the center of all this unbelievable activity? And I think one thing I feel really blessed about is from the get-go, I realized that this was a music of great heritage and historical value,
right.
and I just looked at the older people as like the key to information. And I hung around Lewis Myers. I thought for probably initially I was kind of that pesky guy asking a million questions, but through all of that, a friendship really evolved. And these are people that I look at as just very important. And then later on, I would start a record label, and I would record some harmonica players that I really respected that hadn't had records yet. Big Leon Brooks, Little Willie Anderson, and you know, I became very close to their music through getting to know them, and they give me harmonica tips and lessons, and things like that. Uh, I was doing everything I could to be as close to the music as I possibly could be, and it's a beautiful art form filled with beautiful people that perform it. Oftentimes, living in neighborhoods that are poor and underprivileged, and I saw the balancing act of that, and it was kind of painful at times to be in the middle of that strange dichotomy of
Yeah.
the beauty and the honor and the glorious qualities of music, and at the same time see the poverty and the crime and and just the difference of how people can be treated. So it's a big reality check, to be in the middle of that, and at the same time be accepted and to find friendship and true camaraderie with some of the blues people that I just admired and loved so much. And this was all before I even moved to Phoenix. And in Phoenix, I took those lessons and took them a step farther. So, and being from Chicago and having a record label and being who I am, I started to organize things. Talking about a harmonica player and being in a band. Well, if you're a harmonica player, you kind of either have to play in a band where there's a harmonica chair, because a lot of times there's not, or you have to be the band leader and create a band that's
Yeah.
suited to play harmonica
I
and
can
have the PA and the band.
trust me, I know all about that.
Yeah, I mean, this is not a bad thing, but that led me to become more assertive and powerful in how I did my business. So I realized that as a harmonica player, I kind of had to create my own opportunities, or just wasn't going to happen. And occasionally it would. So I mean, I work with some people that just need a harmonica in their band, and so that was it was beautiful. The late Henry Gray loved it. Harmonica, always loved it. I got to go on a couple tours with Jimmy Rogers, always needed a harmonica. Dave Riley and I have had a 15-year relationship. He is in bad health right now after a stroke.
Mm.
Primetime Smith, who I first met in Chicago in the mid 70s when he was playing with Big Walter Horton, but he's a very harmonica friendly artist. So, and then John Primer, who I'm do some touring with and recording with. He's got a regular harmonica player in his regular band, but he always carries a harmonica. And so I'm especially interested in working with people that love harmonica. And so there's a certain sound. Bob Margolin is another guy I work with all the time, and he's about the most harmonica friendly guy in the world. He just loves working with harmonica players, as does John Primer, as did Henry Gray, and various other people. So harmonica, there's a certain group of people that play with harmonica, but still, if you want to create a harmonica band, if you want to have a band where if you call John Primer into town and he's going to sit in with the house band, you got to have a particular type of player that understands the fine points of that language. It's a subgenre within the blues. Playing harmonica has a different set of rules than if you're playing B.B. King style blues or something more modern than
Right.
that.
It's kind of
So,
like guitar players playing B.B. King versus Albert King versus Stevie Ray, whoever, Johnny Winter, that kind of thing. So tell
uh-huh.
me a little bit about, when did you open the Rhythm Room in Phoenix?
1991, September 18, 1991. So we just recently celebrated our 30th anniversary, if you count the year and a half that we were closed down because of the pandemic. But we made 30 years. Unbelievable.
And well, congratulations on that. I did see that information, I think, on your Facebook page. Um, and the audience that you attract now, are they older, or do you see some young people coming in and want to hear that music?
I see both, but our main audience is an older audience. 30 years ago, when we opened up the club, there's some of the same people that were 30 years younger back then, and together as we grow older. But there are new people that are coming in all the time, but there's not as many as you would like to see. It's not a music that sometimes you see like young performers that are really, really good, and you think, well,
Right.
good, bring in a younger audience, but they just seem to be playing for the older audience. Um, and so that's a little bit disappointing. But I'll tell you where you really see some young people. If ever you go to the International Blues Competition, you see all of the young people that are really trying to find their way in this music. And there's a lot of great talent and a lot of
Hmm.
ambition. If anybody is worried about the state of the blues, go to the International Blues Competition in Memphis in January, and you'll see how alive and well the blues is. As various people who, in their own communities, have and their own blues societies have gone through their own blues challenges to get to the next place where they can advance to the IBCs, and then the IBCs there's preliminaries and there's semifinals and finals, and whoever gets into the finals has a really good launching pad for their career. Some people have come a long way from being not known to being all of a sudden an overnight sensation, which is a pretty powerful thing. So, but
I would assume it
uh,
would be.
Democrats
Yeah.
are a little bit older, and here's the other thing too, is that you and I were around to see some of the great blues people, but the younger people might not know it as the music of some of the older people, or they might
Mm-mm.
know the record. They don't know the personality of the artists. And if you went and saw Lightning Hopkins or Howlin' Wolf or Muddy Waters or uh, different artists, the personality was so much a part of the music. They were playing their personality. They weren't. It wasn't faking anything. Their
Oh no.
their music was its raw personality, and
I
that's
saw
that's
Freddie King once when I was in college, many years ago, and nobody knew who he was. It was in South Texas, and they go, "Hey, Freddie King's here," and I'm going, "You got to be kidding me," you know. And so he came in. We played in a like almost a dining room, and he played. And I remember him breaking a string because I thought this is going to take a while. It didn't. 2 minutes later, he's playing again. So,
sure.
and one of the King people, and what I think now, and it's a genre that I wish more young people would pick up. And it was kind of like I was watching Eric Clapton talking about his tour now, and he said everybody that sees me now is basically over 60, and he says they all know who when I was stoned, they know when I was drunk, and now
Mhm.
I'm 76. He said I don't really care anymore. But the thing about it for me about the blues is, and you just got to talk about it. It's the character built into it that is real. And you talk to people about when I listen to John Lee Hooker doing something, and I'm going like, man, there's a lot of space in that, and they'll go, what are you talking about? And I'm going like, he could sing like 3 words, and it's like, it sounds cool. I mean, it just sounds unbelievable. Then you throw people like yourself in there, and given that soulful harmonica sound that I've always loved, it adds a huge dimension to it. I mean, we can play. I mean, obviously, BB King can play lead and all that good stuff, but to me, what you do is very important. And it's one of those historical things. And I'm so glad to be able to talk to you and you talk about it. And I can see that you're still very passionate about it. But I want to go back to one of the things you said. And one of the things that you said was, I don't know why they accepted me or how I got lucky. I'm sure there's a lot of talent there, young man. So, I mean, I've heard you now. I mean, I've heard you listen to you, obviously, but you probably had a lot back then. And I'm sure it was a little uniqueness that you were the white guy there to play that, but you had to be blessed and you had to rehearse a lot So what did your parents say about it? I mean, were like most parents going, "Oh, you don't want to be a musician," but how did they feel about that whole thing of you playing harmonica?
It wasn't what they had planned for me. I'll, uh, they had spent money to, pay for my college education. So I went to University of Tulsa in Oklahoma, a strange place to go if you're from the Chicago area, but I
Yep.
really experienced it. It was a great town. And I actually did a lot of playing over there with the Tulsa people. I recently got to play in Tulsa again, coming back after years. It was just a beautiful experience to be back in Tulsa. But the so I was whenever I was on break and during the summer, I would just go to all the blues clubs and learn everything I could and take it back, and I'd play in the bands in Tulsa I was working with and do all of that. Well, one summer I was uh, hanging out with Coco Taylor and her husband Pops, and the Pops said, we're thinking about adding another piece. We want you to come to our rehearsal. Um, and possibly join the band. Let's see how it fits. And they gave me the number, and I would have to go to the South Side. I would have to borrow my parents' car to do this, and of course, to borrow the car, and they're like, "No, no way, are you going to go off and ride around the country with the blues band? You need to go back to school, this and that."
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I was embarrassed. I just like I couldn't even call the number. I still have the number that Coco gave me where she wrote it up, those cards, and it had something on it. So she ripped it in half and wrote her number, and I put it up on my website because it's so symbolic. But there was like an opportunity to maybe have gone to this other place. But was I ready? Probably not.
Yeah.
Probably too young and needed to grow up. But I was probably too young in my instrument too. But that was one that really hurt. So it didn't exactly go along with how I was raised, and it became a little bit dilemma. And that's part of why I went to Arizona to kind of try and figure out where I stood in all of this. And ironically, it wasn't until I Louisiana Red was staying with me. I just was in the middle of this purity of the love of this music, and I go, this is what I have to do. I don't care if I don't make money. I don't care. I've got to do this. This is
Yeah.
the that I have to live in, because this is what wakes me up in the morning with my passion. And I had a talk with my parents about it. They did not like that. They just wanted me to be safe and secure and all of
Yeah.
that. They became very supportive of it after they saw that it served me well. And I also worked the establishment around just being a musician, as with a radio show, and then eventually with a nightclub. And they saw how all of this, I was actually able to use my business degree from the University of Tulsa to start a blues club. It was
Well,
kind
yeah,
of,
there you go. Business degree. Yeah. It's a business.
in the end, they were proud of me for what I achieved. But initially it was like, it was a conflict of how they envisioned my future to be. So I was kind of struggling with that conflict in my life until I became clear on who I had to be. And once I did, I never looked back from that point forward.
I
So
think that generation um, was not keen to musicians. And it's a little bit different now, I think, from being around younger people. But my dad was like, "You need to get a real job." I'd say, "I want to play in a band." And I mean, I started when I was 12 or 13. And he just didn't understand. And here I am all these years later, still performing, still recording. And unfortunately, he passed away before I could show him anything of any quality. But I think that generation was not that keen on it. And so they kind of wanted to poo poo it. And I understand, especially if you were in the blues era, it's a little bit different group than playing rock music, so to speak. And so I always think it's interesting how many people took their passion like you did, and you said you wake up in the morning and go, "That's I got to do that." And not everybody has that. I mean, you may have the talent, but they may not know what drives them. And I'm sure you've been in so many bands and performed with people that they're just kind of pedestrian about it. I'm here, I can play, and it's hard. My last band broke up last year, right after COVID, and everybody goes, "You're going to start another one?" I go, it's just it's a pain to get a bunch of people that are dedicated as much as I am that want to do it. And it's as you get older, it's harder to find people because they usually come up to me when I perform and go, I used to play when I was a kid, and they go, I always say, why aren't you playing now? Oh, I'm too old. And I go, you're only too old when you're dead. That's kind of the way I always thought about it. So you do is the club open every night or on the weekends, and do you have people come in? Tell me a little bit about the whole setup at the Rhythm Room.
Well, the Rhythm Room has always been a place that has been based in the foundation of blues, but it's covered all types of music. So we've always called ourselves Phoenix's Roots and Blues Concert Club. And what the idea of opening the Rhythm Room was a little bit bigger capacity, a little bit more of a professional way to show off the blues. And so, there were some things that were just concert clubs, but we were a more blues specific concert club. And whenever, especially during the 90s, people were still traveling around quite a bit in their vans. And if they were going from Texas to California, they were going to stop through Phoenix. And I had a
Mm.
gig. It was a beautiful thing to have that. And many great friendships were made. Isn't that plus? I had a great house band with Chico Chisholm when we first opened, and we'd take people into the recording studio if they wanted to make a few songs with us, and we just had a blast. So, but the Rhythm Room, has always been a room about music. There's no TVs or pool tables or any of that. There's a room that is filled with great sight lines and whatnot. So we opened up and we immediately filled a niche that wasn't there before. We had something to offer the community that was special. So I had been on the other side of that, and I promoted a bunch of different people coming into town. A lot of times I would get a band I really enjoyed and talk to them and get them booked and have my band open up for them, and that would kind of be how I would do the business of that. And it was a pleasurable experience to do that, to present music that I cared about. And so it seemed like a very simple step. I was at a point wondering what I was going to do, and I get a phone call from this guy. It's, hey, it's Lenny, and I'm thinking about starting a blues club on this property. And this was a club that I used to play at. It was the first place I ever booked with Louisiana Red when I during the
Mm.
1980s when I first moved to town, and
Right.
it had business for a while. And so he wanted me to develop a business on this. He was the owner of the property. Oh,
There you go.
yeah, sorry, we went to a little. So he was the owner of the property, and he was open for me developing a business. Eventually, I bought him out, and now, after 10 years of working for him in the capacity of a de facto owner, I became the actual owner, and that's how that goes. So, if you're the owner, you experience the good and the bad times.
Oh yeah.
There's the pandemic. There's the 2008 recession.
Yep.
There's different things that happen. Of course, September 11th. All those things, would create a downward turn in the music economy, and so that's how that would go. But here we are. I don't think if I wasn't a musician and so into the whole proposition of presenting the music and understanding how it all fits into an interesting synergy, I don't know that I would be able to look at this as just a business. So, as a business, it falls short of a bottom line often. But as a lifestyle and as something that is a enabler for other great things, it's a very powerful tool.
It's also interesting to me is when I found you looking up information for Sonny Boy Williamson because I wrote a song about Sonny Boy on my last album, but um, you have a lot of followers on Facebook. I mean, you have a great selection of finding those old pictures and all that cool stuff that you put up there, and I don't see how many people like it. So there's a lot of people that are still intrigued or interested in it, which really makes it nice. But you also do you still do the radio show? Do you still do a blues show, or are you not doing that? Or are you doing that still?
30 years and going. It's a 5-hour weekly show. I still love it every week. Every week I walk in with I usually do like about 2 or 3 different themes. I'll do one artist I'll do another artist of a different style, or I'll do like a label or a particular brand of blues, and and highlight different features of the blues, and as well as throwing in other things on top of all that. But it makes for an interesting 5 hour journey, and everybody who comes out of those 5 hours learns a little bit more about what my feature's about. And I get to study it a little bit and learn about it and be a blues nerd, which I love. So
Well,
uh, get
that's
to
what
nerd
you
out.
do. Well,
You know,
I just really appreciate the fact that you talk with us, because this is something I'm really deeply interested in, always have been. I wish I knew more. I wish I mean, you start talking about people you've played with. I'm envious of you. I really am, because you got to meet them. Of course, the one thing I've always said about meeting famous people, or really you get to know them and you're like, maybe I didn't want to meet him after I met him, but it's one of those things that you've met so many cool musicians. But just in the short time that we have left here, tell me about who was the most famous person that you wished that you, I mean, have you had the opportunity to play with people that you wanted to play with? Is there somebody that, I mean, was alive, obviously, that you didn't get to play with? I mean, where are those still out there?
there's always people, and there's new people that are coming up that are pretty fantastic. But I think if there's like one person that really fulfilled a dream, it was when I got to work with Jimmy Rogers, because
Wow.
I bought the record Chicago Bound when I was still very young in the music. I'd ride my bicycle over to Paul's Recorded Music in downtown Wilmette, Illinois, and I would buy different records. They had listening booths, and I remember hearing that record for the first time and taking it home. And I literally would go to bed at night when I was in high school dreaming about that record. And then to get to know Jimmy, I had seen Jimmy play many, many times. I even sat in with him once before. But then when he came and we did a week together, we did 2 weeks together. And the way that worked is that his agent would basically say, Jimmy needs this amount. And so I'd put a band together and put a tour together. And I also put a recording session together. So I got to do
Wow.
all. But in the process of that, I also found a really wonderful friend, and I got to ask him all these unbelievable questions. I wish I had some of the stuff on tape recorder, but that was really it couldn't get any better than that, because here was the guy that was one of the founders of the music that I love. He was one of the guys that was in that influential Muddy Waters band. We would talk about Little Walter and Muddy and just about that whole time thing, Henry Gray, tell me the stories of Henry way back when. There's all these amazing stories, and they were just flowing from him. But I knew all these reference points for him, and I could ask him these questions, and he loved that. And then on top of that, we had a real fun time just goofing off together. We had a real sense of humor together, and so it was really a joy to get to know Jimmy and to do some work with him, and then to have him call my name, say, all right, Bob, play me some harmonica. And it's like, how cool is that?
Yeah, that's
So,
pretty cool. That's pretty
and I
cool.
got a number of different artists, but if there's one artist I had to pinpoint, it'd be that artist. I mean, it's just so cool, and just played blues in such a way. And Jimmy's music was meant to be propelled by the harmonica. It was harmonica driven music.
Hmm.
And that, to play with some of the original guys like that play in that style, that is something that you can't, the people coming up nowadays will never have that experience. But I got the opportunity to do that, and part of it was that I had a good business sense. I could put together a tour and do all that, and part of it is I just loved the music, and I played in the style of those artists, and they appreciated that. It was pretty special situation.
Well, and you have the same kind of mindset that I do. I'm a creative person, but I'm a business guy. I was in the corporate world my whole life. And and I tell, when young people coming up and ask me about the music, I always tell them it's the business of music, not the music business. And so I was talking to somebody the other day and I said, is that your mom out there? Yeah. Don't listen to your mom anymore, because your mom's going to tell you she loves you. You need to get people like me to tell you, okay, you need to get better. I think I think that's what has helped you, probably that degree. And you said that, and that's unique, because most people, when they get involved with music, and we've all met them, oh, I love music, I want to play it my whole life. And then they start playing, you're like, you're not going to be able to play it your whole life. You're not that good. And you kind of go, sorry. I wish more people knew about the camaraderie that goes around a band. You know, you have to be in a band, and I've told other people this. I've told my wife, you know, once you're a musician, you're in the club. It doesn't matter what kind of musician you are. If you've been paid to play and you played at a lot of places, I don't care if you're a blues guy, a hard rock guy, a rap, you're in the club. And so you can talk to people, and that's part of it. And I have a friend of mine that's an illusionist, and I told him one time, I wish people, when you're up there and people give you applause and they really love what you're doing, you only know how that feels. You can't tell people how that feels. And top it off, when you're playing with people like Jimmy Rogers and you're getting that vibe, man, what a trip. I mean, seriously, how much better can it get than that?
You're going right into the well of the soul of the blues, and you're in the footsteps of the people that you've admired the most, Little Walter and Big Walter Horton, you know, who all shared the stage with him. All of a sudden, you're there trying to hold your own and do so in a respectful way. That's really a powerful thing. So,
So where do they, okay, so let's do a little marketing. How do people find you, other than coming to Phoenix? They go to your website, but what's a great place to go and find your music, or find where they can find more information about the blues and your business,
well, all you have to do is know how to spell my name, and you
which
can
is
just
right there. It's right there on the screen behind me.
BOBCORRE, and bobcorritore.com is a website. But you know, if you go to Amazon or any place where music is sold, you know, my music's out there. I've got you know, I've been involved with some really great record labels. I'm currently with the Vistone label group, and I've been doing some really great things with them. And it's at a really good point of, you know, me coming even further into my own. But you know, before that, it was Delta Groove, and before that, it was Blue Witch Records, and my very first record label was High Tone. And every one of those record labels really treated me right, and I had great relationships with them. High Tone, they retired the record label.
I kind of remember High Tone. I remember that label. I
Oh yeah,
kind of,
Robert
yeah.
Jolis Walker got their start on that record label. It was a great record label, and people who were in it for the music of it. They really were in it for all the right reasons. And you know, Blue Witch Records, pretty amazing. And then and Dale loved the blues, and that was kind of a hobby label for him. And he did that for a while and realized that that wasn't really a business in the way that he would want it to be. Then Randy Chortkoff owned Delta Groove Records. He was a harmonica player and a friend of mine, and he just made everybody on his record label into a family. That was a very powerful thing. And then of course, Vistone is Richard Rosenblatt is a harmonica player. Bob Margolin was one of my friends, and Amy Bratt. Those are the partners in that record label, and what a team! You know, they're all personal friends, and we all work together. And you know, I put out records that they're proud of, and that they are able to work very well on the promotional angle. And it's a win-win. And I just feel very blessed to be at the place I'm at right now, where I have a certain amount of credibility and a certain amount of marketability. So, you know, the records that they're putting out, they get nice reviews, and they get you know, a certain amount of attention, and they get sold through the distributor, and it all works into a business. But really, I think the business of this, the real pay that you get, is that you get to keep staying in this music and keep your head in this music. You get to keep growing as a musician.
Yeah.
That is the pay, you know. So I'll make these records, and I'll pay for sessions and put all the stuff together, and I might not make money off it. I might break even, I might not. But the more
You
important,
don't care. You don't care. You just
the
love
more
what you're doing.
that I get to be an artist, I get to put my expression out there, and there's an audience for it. There's people that over all these years, I've developed a fan base of people who really seem to care about what I'm doing, and I never want to disappoint. I just always want to put out something that's of the highest possible quality that I'm able to do. And the cool thing about that is that every time you make a record, you have to kind of compete with yourself, and that you have to make a record that is, it can never be the same record. It's always going to be different. It might, certain records may hit a little bit harder than the other records, but they all have to be really honest and true to the music. And as long as I make things that I'm proud of and I believe in, there seems to be other people that believe in it too. And I've developed a worldwide, audience, and this little instrument has taken me all around the world. And I can't believe the blessings that I have. And so every day I pray that I am worthy of the blessings and the opportunities I have been given, and I try and live up to these opportunities.
Well, I really want to tell you how much I thank you for coming on here, and I enjoy your music immensely. I enjoy the detail, the history. Your lifestyle is interesting to me, and well, I think it's because you got to hang out with some greats, and you also play an instrument. I've tried, but I'm never going to do it. I'd rather lay down. We were talking about B flats earlier. I'd rather play a three chord blue and B flat than I'd try to figure out. And I played with a lot of people, but not to the ilk that you've played to that quality. So the last thing I want to tell you or ask you to do is, why don't you whip that baby out and lay a little bit on us, and take us out. But before you do that, though, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank Bob Corritore for coming on here today at the KT and the Trout Show. Remember, push the button down at the bottom that says subscribes, and you're going to have more people like Bob come on here. The more people you tell about this, the more people are going to listen to it, because we're going to continue to grow this channel so we can have great performers like Bob on here, and other people are involved, the business players. The business people are involved with the business. So KT and the Trout thanks you. And Bob, take us out with some music, okay?
Thank you so much for this time. And here's a little blues for you.
All right, thanks, Bob. Mm.